Have you ever told yourself just one more year of working only to say the same thing next year and the next? Well, today we're going to talk about some of the warning signs that I often see. And even if a few of these 8 signs apply to you, retiring earlier might not just be possible, it might actually be one of the smartest decisions you could make. But the problem is that if you are starting to see these signs, really the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to actually walk away and retire, no matter how financially ready you are. So first, let's talk about what I call the silent retirement trap that keeps people working a lot longer than they really need to. Now, a lot of people, they think they're still working because they have to, but what if the real reason is something else entirely different? I want you to imagine you're on an airplane, you've reached your final destination, the seatbelt sign turns off, the doors open, but instead of standing up and walking out, you're just sitting there. You're just going to stay there, and because you're afraid. What if the pilot made a mistake? What if you're actually not at the right destination? Maybe you just need a little bit more fuel just in case. Now, meanwhile, everyone else is stepping into their next adventure, and you're still frozen in your seat. Now, that's what happens to so many people nearing retirement, and it's really interesting because the studies actually show that 80% of retirees initially fear running out of money, but later regret not retiring sooner when they realize they had more than enough, when they were actually there, they actually were at their destination. But if you put together a financial plan, you've run the numbers will tell you if you're ready. And if the numbers do look good, and then the real risk at that point is not running out of money, it's running out of time. Because the goal isn't to die with the biggest bank account, at least for a lot of the people that I work with. Because you can keep kicking the can down the road, and of course your assets will grow, you'll have the bigger bank account, but the goal for a lot of people is to live the best life possible while they still have their health and freedom. So that brings us to the first major warning sign that we'll talk about, which is if you're staying in your job out of fear rather than necessity. Fear rather than reason and logic could be keeping you working years longer than you actually need to. Secondly, I say retirement can wait, but can your health? Now, you might just be thinking your job is tiring you out, but what if it's actually taking years off your life? If you're someone that finds yourself at this point in a high stress environment and it feels like it's just draining your battery too much and you're actually in a position financially to retire early, it could be the second warning sign. And for some of you, this could be actually really serious. A 2023 study from the Journal of Occupational Health and Psychology found that chronic work stress increases the risk of heart disease by 40%. And then second, the average person retires at 65, but research from the National Bureau of Economic Research suggests that retiring earlier can reduce stress-related illnesses and extend lifespan. And then lastly, not surprisingly, a survey from the American Psychological Association found that 72% of workers report experiencing stress that affects their physical health, but the study found that they keep working anyway. Now, a lot of my job is helping people figure out the financial side, right? Taxes, withdrawals, portfolio strategy. And I could show you 1,000 different scenarios where working longer makes the numbers look a lot better. But here's what the numbers won't tell you. If your work is putting a burden on your health, waiting to retire might not just be costing you your time, it could be costing years off your life. So if you're starting to see this sign that your job is making you sicker instead of wealthier, it might be a time to walk away before it's too late. That might look like an early retirement for some people, or maybe it might look like just an entirely different chapter, career, side hustle, whatever it is for you. Okay, so number 3, most people stay in the workforce because of this one nagging fear, and that is, what if something goes wrong? And I get it. Over the past several years, we've seen pandemics, crazy elections, market corrections, inflation spikes, and we've all perhaps had maybe something really expensive break at some point. I know I have. Now, when everything feels uncertain, the idea of leaving behind a stable paycheck feels risky. But here's the reality. There will never be a perfect moment in the market to retire, I guess only in hindsight, of course. And if someone tells you they have a perfect financial product that eliminates risk and giving you all this upside, that's not financial planning, guys. That is a sales pitch. Because the truth is, when you retire, markets will drop. It's not a question of if, but when. Curveballs are going to happen. But the key is understanding how markets actually work in retirement. Now, this chart shows that over the past 96 years, the S&P 500 has seen plenty of ups and downs. Any given year, 27% of the time, the market was negative. So if you're only investing in a single year, your chances of seeing a loss were relatively high. But we need to shift our minds from the short term to the long term, because we can see that the longer you stay invested, this chart is great, the better your odds of success. Bad markets happen, we can see throughout history, but they're also temporary. If we go back to this chart, we see that investors who held on for just 2 more years saw their chances of experiencing a negative return drop by nearly half. So what am I talking about? What does this mean for you when it comes to the fear of what if something bad happens? It means that if your investment plan already accounts for market drops, inflation, and has a buffer for the unexpected, then staying in the workforce just to feel safer might not actually be making you safer at all. The real risk isn't running out of money, it's running out of time. Okay, so the fourth sign, and I want you to be honest, are you working because you love what you do or just because it's what you've always done? Now, it's easy to stay in the routine. You wake up, you go to work, grab a cup of coffee, you collect a paycheck, but maybe it does not give you the same level of fulfillment or satisfaction it once did. And if you think about retiring early from your career, it's kind of like how you'd think about changing your house. When you originally bought your first house, you had certain requirements, but since then your priorities maybe changed, or maybe you have simply outgrown your house, right? Do you move, do you renovate, or do you stay put? You can think about your career, think about retirement in the same exact way. Have your priorities or needs changed? Can you tweak or renovate your job and make it more fulfilling? Or do you need to move on altogether? Of course, just like when you buy a new house, if you choose to retire early, you want to think through and actually prepare before jumping in with 2 feet. And what I saw with a lot of clients, especially during the pandemic, which was really interesting, and many of you have probably heard of this, but it was the Great Resignation. A lot of clients from our firm and retirees really all around the US left their roles and they felt like they needed a change. And actually, there were record-breaking numbers in late 2021 of people leaving and calling it quits. So again, if you're starting to recognize that your interest is sort of waning in on what you're currently doing and it's more of a phase, it might be a signal that you might be ready for a new chapter, one where maybe your skills and passions align more closely. Maybe it's just a different path altogether, reducing it down or working on your own terms. So if you're feeling this, it may be a sign to change, and that might mean an early retirement. Okay, next, and this is a really, really important one and one I hear all the time, and it kind of sounds harsh, but your job can likely replace you. Maybe some of you might be a little bit of a panic if you left and your team didn't have you, but your family can never replace the time that they're going to lose with you. If you were to survey millionaires and billionaires on their deathbed with what regrets they have, I can guarantee for most, it wouldn't be, I wish I worked longer, I wish I had more money. Many people delay retirement with the right idea, of course, for providing for your family. You want to make sure they have enough. You want to make sure everyone's taken care of, and that's beautiful. But the harder question is answering how much is enough? And if I do have enough, what would my family rather have? More time with me or more money or a greater inheritance? Of course, maybe some of you have heard of this, but the Harvard's 85-year study on happiness found that strong relationships are the #1 predictor of a fulfilling life, not career, not success, or wealth. And I love this other chart by Tim Urban showing what your life looks like in years. And it's sort of challenged my own mortality, made me think and understand, hey, saving is important, but also living and enjoying my relationships around me. And if you can spend each month while having a fulfilling career and also being around your loved ones, I'm not talking about you right now. I'm talking about the people that are starting to see the sign that their family or loved ones need them more than their job does. And I know that the top regret of people in their final years, according to palliative care nurses, is I wish I had spent more time with the people that I love. Okay, so the next one comes down to this question. Are you working for your investments, or are your investments supposed to be working for you? Now, what do I mean by that? I see this sign all the time that you should retire early. It's if you're waiting just a few more years chasing returns on a stock or a certain investment to retire. I'm not talking about hitting a number where you'll be financially ready. I'm talking about the type of person who is thinking that just a couple more years of compounding in this specific investment will give me even more security. I'll have enough then. That will be the perfect time to retire early. But this can be a massive mistake. If your investments are still in full growth mode, like concentrated in a handful of stocks or one sector or speculation, you might actually be setting yourself to working a lot longer, not for more security. Now, I want you to imagine if you're at a casino and you've been on an incredible winning streak all night, your chip stacks higher and higher than ever, and you could be at a point where you can cash out comfortably, but instead of walking away, you keep playing, assuming, hey, the luck is going to continue. This has been great for me in the past. It's going to keep on going. But when it comes to investments, the game can change. And then before you know it, you're losing fast. And before you know it, half of what you won is gone. This is exactly what happens when retirees delay their exit from the workforce while still playing the markets like they're in their 30s. They assume their portfolio will keep growing until it doesn't. Okay, so I'm not trying to predict or forecast the current market we're in, but this is a great historical example of what happened in the 2000s. We call it the lost decade. If you were retired in 2000 with just owning the US market, you would have had a negative return over a 10-year period. And at some point, investing just isn't about winning the game, it's about securing the win. If your portfolio is still structured for speculative growth and you're already financially set, waiting any longer is just gambling with your retirement security. A really smart retirement plan isn't about getting the highest returns, it's about making sure you don't have to start over after one bad market cycle. If you have enough to create a plan that is built to last and you're staying in the workforce just to chase more growth, ask yourself, so if you're holding off in retirement just to squeeze out a little more from a single stock or investment, you're not investing, you're gambling with your time, and time is the one thing that you cannot get back. Okay, so this next one I call kicking the bucket list. And this is a sign for the type of person that has been spending years saving for someday. But what if someday never actually comes, right? People often assume they'll have plenty of time in retirement to do all the things they've dreamed of, travel, new hobbies, family trips. But the reality, that window is a lot smaller than you think. And every year you delay, that window gets a little bit smaller. And a study from Stanford Center on Longevity found that the go-go years of retirement, the most active mobile years, last just an average of 7 to 10 years before health starts to decline. Again, and one of the biggest regrets retirees have is that they didn't save enough. It's that they didn't live enough. If you have the money, but you keep on putting off these bucket list items, you'll want to start asking yourself, are you actually waiting for the right time or just running out of time? And finally, this is a very, very common one, and it's called the arbitrary number trap. It's when you start to get to that mindset, hey, once I hit 1 million or 2 million or whatever number that you're thinking of, I'll finally retire. But what if the number chasing doesn't actually change your life? It's like you're walking through a desert, chasing an oasis in the distance, and you swear, hey, it's just getting a little farther. But right when you get there, it disappears. And then there's the next one appearing, and it's actually even further away. That's exactly what happens when you keep moving your retirement goalposts. The number you're chasing isn't real. It's a moving target that keeps pushing further and further in the future. And a Schwab Modern Wealth survey found that when asked how much money they needed to feel wealthy, Americans always reported they needed double what they currently had, regardless of income level. But the reality is that the research shows that most retirees withdraw far less than their portfolio allows, meaning they could have retired years earlier. So if you're chasing a number, it's not going to change your life. And when you get there, you'll probably want more. So ask yourself, do I actually need that much? Or is what I have enough and going to give me the lifestyle that I actually need in retirement? If you're still working just at a round number, you might actually be much closer to retirement than you think if you just run a plan. But there's a big problem that I often see, and it's people having the wrong idea for investing for retirement. Some people are on the opposite end of the spectrum where they're way too conservative, others maybe way too aggressive, like one of the things we talked about in this video, and it can create a huge risk both ways, right? So I made a video on how to build your portfolio for early retirement. You can watch that by clicking right here.